So we will go ahead and call the City Council meeting to order, seeing a quorum here at City Hall. I will note Councilor Shannon's participation online. The day is Monday, October 7th, 2024. The time is 6:09 p.m. The first item on our agenda is a motion to adopt our agenda as amended, and I would ask for a motion to adopt our agenda as amended on Civic Clerk.
I would make that motion.
So moved by Councilor Doherty. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Bergman. I will note that amendment includes the removal of the deliberative item on the police station resolution, leaving just one deliberative item regarding the Fletcher Free Library. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. The second item on our agenda is a proposed executive session. On this item, Councilor Doherty, may I, before we turn to a motion on that, if I could turn to City Attorney Jessica Brown to outline, to the extent she can, the factual circumstances supporting the council adjourning to executive session.
The discussion will be about commercial real estate negotiations between Burlington Electric Department and private parties, and the city would be at a substantial disadvantage in negotiations and would risk disclosing confidential information if this was held in public session.
Thank you, Attorney Brown. With those comments from the City Attorney's Office, Councilor Doherty, could I turn to you for a motion on the first paragraph of the recommended action on Civic Clerk?
Yes, Mr. President. Based on the assertions by our city attorney, I would make a motion to find that premature general knowledge of commercial real estate negotiations between BED and private parties would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage in the negotiations because the city risks disclosing confidential information in public.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Any discussion on that motion? We will then go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Upon making that finding, Councilor Doherty, could I turn to you for the second motion?
Yes, based upon that finding, I would move, but based upon the finding of substantial disadvantage, I would move that the committee enter into executive session under the provisions of 1 VSA Section 313 A1A and 1 VSA Section 313A2 to include legal counsel, the City Council, the Mayor and her staff, the Chief Administrative Officer and/or departmental designees, and appropriate BED staff.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. I will note that we will be joined by BED General Manager Darren Springer. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously. The council is in executive session. We have a time certain of 6:30 p.m. for public forum, and so we will be back for that. Thank you. All right, it is 6:37 p.m., and we will call the City Council back to order. Thank you for everyone's patience here in Contoy's auditorium. The next item on our agenda after our executive session is public forum, and we will go ahead and open public forum now at 6:37 p.m. Under our council rules, we will first hear from Burlington residents here in City Hall. At the moment, I have 7 Burlington residents signed up to speak. We will then turn online for any Burlington residents that are online. We have 1 Burlington resident who signed up online to speak for public forum. After that, we will return here to Contoy's auditorium and ask that any non-Burlington residents here in person speak. We have 6 non-Burlington residents signed up, and then if we had anyone signed up online, we would turn online again at that point in time. As a reminder, it's the council's rule that to participate virtually in public forum, you must sign up at least an hour in advance through the City Council's website. Each speaker in public forum will be provided 2 minutes. I understand that sometimes 2 minutes does not feel like enough, but that is our rule, and we will be keeping to it. When I call your name, if you're here in person, please come to the table. Make sure the microphone is on by ensuring the green light on the microphone itself is on. There's another timer light that will go on, but please make sure that the green light on the microphone itself is on. and speak directly into it. For those online, I will let you know once you've been unmuted. In reviewing the public comment forms received thus far, I understand and appreciate a number of individuals may be here to speak on items that are sensitive and personal in nature. I respect all of you who've taken the time to be here. In accordance with our rules, I'm also going to make my standard ask, which is that any comments please be directed to me as the chair and not to any other individual. Speakers should not personalize their comments, and tonight I ask that public comment be limited to city affairs and local matters. It is important that City Hall remain a safe place for those who serve, those in attendance, and those watching our meetings. The Council respects and values the diversity of opinions and perspectives on public issues. We ask, however, that all comments be free from individualized attacks, hate, harassment, obscenities, or other derogatory language about other people or groups based on their age, race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, or any other protected characteristic. We also ask that public comments avoid conduct which is unreasonably loud, disruptive, or discourteous. If I interrupt a speaker at any point, it will not be because I'm trying to cut them off or limit their time. It will be to ask that the speaker please proceed in accordance with the rules as I've described them. If public comment continues in violation of these rules, however, I reserve the right to end public comment at that point in time. With that, we will then proceed to our first Burlington resident who signed up for public forum, and that is Colin Palmer. After Colin Palmer will be Grace Ahmed. Sorry, could you, I don't think the microphone's on. The light on the microphone itself.
Hello, my name is Colin Palmer. I actually did not know this was happening today, so this was kind of a surprise, but I am not surprised by the context of this whatsoever. First of all, today is October 7th, so I'm going to read you some key figures from the past year in Palestine. Between a minimum of 155,466 and a maximum of 777,030 people, including 51,802 confirmed direct martyrs and 16,500 of whom are children. That is the total death toll. 96% of the population faces acute food insecurity, with 2.15 million people in crisis levels of hunger, 902 Palestinians' families entirely wiped out, $111 billion of initiated U.S. military aid and sales to Israel since October 7th, 2023. The United States wants to go to war with Lebanon and Syria and wants to provide its ally Israel in this psychopathic occupation, and it refuses not to. It's in direct cahoots with it. Meanwhile, over 200 deaths have occurred in the south due to Hurricane Helen, and a black Muslim man, Marcellus Williams, was executed by George Parsons despite a lack of criminal evidence. And right now I see Taisha, who is currently being shafted by city council, and I understand that this is a product of the system, and I am not surprised by this racism. It makes complete sense.
Okay, I'm going to ask that you please not personalize your comments.
I got 4 seconds, and I just want to accuse you all of being racist. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we will not accept further public comment along those lines. It is in violation of our rules. Happy to have folks speak their truths in accordance with our rules. We'll move to our next speaker, Grace Ahmed, who will be followed by Fareen Paris.
Hi, I am Grace Ahmed. I'm a resident of the South End. I have 5 kids. I'm going to start with my October 7th story because I'm on a theme of safety. So my family, despite the name Ahmed, is Jewish, and last year I pulled my middle schooler out of Edmonds because there were kids chanting "F the Jews" in the hallway. So that's a real thing about safety in our community. The other thing I want to address about safety in our community is who safety is for, and what that means, and how much Burlington loves buzzwords, and how much we fail to really follow through on meeting our goals of racial equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our first Black department head, that's a woman, was driven out in an egregious way. And I would really encourage the city to strongly consider going into mediation with Taisha Green and trying to make things right, finally. It's been a long time, and there's things that she's asking for the community as well as her personal self, for safety for everyone, not just the rich people who want more cops up in their neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Our next speaker is Farine Paris, who will be followed by Kaya Morris.
Dearest ancestors, help me to remember that my story is my truth, regardless of what these individuals looking at me may think. Today, we uplift and we center Black women. Dear Ben, I want you to help me make sense. Help me make sense of how former Director Green is responsible for a Juneteenth program that happened in 2022 when she moved to Minneapolis back in March. Help me make sense, Ben, of how after Taisha Green resigned, the former mayor moved the REIB from general funding to temporary funds. It almost seems like we wanted it to phase out, because if you follow the track with the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd next year, that is when these dollars will run out. Ben, help me make sense of when I call 7 days and I tell an editor that the title of your article is anti-Black, harmful, and violent. Why can't you change this? You share with him these things, this white cis man, but yet my thoughts do not matter. Ben, help me make sense of why you, in your humanity, is loved and protected and seen. Yet it seems like every time I come to this microphone, I'm fighting for Black women. I'm fighting for Black boys that are being charged with murders when they shouldn't. I'm fighting for freedom in Palestine. Why are those things that are weighing on our hearts not being talked about? You know why? Because it's intentional. You love to silence the truth, but I'm here to tell everyone, we're not going back. We're not going back. As Malcolm said, Black women are the most unprotected people, but we are here. We are here. I am a person. I am not 3/5. It is not an enslaved time anymore. Quit this modern day lynching.
Thank you, Farine. Our next speaker is Kaya Morris, to be followed by Todd DeLuca.
Today, my remarks are on public safety. I do not feel safe watching the only Black woman in the City Council repeatedly be silenced and censured by white leadership on the council. The public is tallying and watches, and it makes Black electeds across the state feel unsafe. It makes us all unsafe. I don't feel safe when the City Council cruelly rejected the resolution in support of demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. The things that it does to those folks who bear those identities, the 3,000 people, and many more who have been impacted by it, we see the actions. It makes us all unsafe. I don't feel safe when the only department designated to have a laser focus on racial equity at a time of deep racial divide is allowed to be defunded and sunsetted in June of next year. It makes us all unsafe. I don't feel safe when the city police department, which is only understaffed because the officers abandoned their oath instead of learning new ways to do their work, is slated to get further tax dollars and significant funds for expansion. It makes us all unsafe. I don't feel safe when the city takes to the press once again to defame former Director Taisha Green, to hear explicitly that the city has no intention of restoring or providing reparations to her for her legitimate defamation of character by the city and the administrative staff. It sends a signal to the rest of BIPOC across Vermont, much as my story did, and their elected body failed to do anything about it as well. The world is watching. It makes us all unsafe. Black lives still matter, and acting in any manner otherwise makes everyone across Vermont unsafe. You are being watched. It is noted, and it has an impact. Don't abandon it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Todd DeLuca, who will be followed by Romeo von Herman.
Hi, City Council. I'm Todd DeLuca from Ward 4. Friday morning, I saw Burlington Fire take a young woman out of 300 Lake Street on a stretcher after what may have been an overdose. And while I was there, I heard some concerning things about the safety of the building, issues involving a front security door that may have been broken for over a month, drug dealers, homeless people, and drug-addicted tenants that reminded me of some of the stories I've heard of Decker Towers. So I was just worried that there's something going on at this building that might be escalating, and it might not be a very safe place right now for the seniors and other people who are living there. And I hope if it's not already on your radar, if you'd please consider taking a look at what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Our next speaker is Romeo von Herman, who will be followed by Tyler Pasterok.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Mayor, councilors, city staff, fellow Burlingtonians. I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm here to support the deliberative item agenda, the first one that President Travers, Council Barlow, Carpenter, Doherty, Letwin, McKnight, and Shannon have set forth. As a new modern police facility is crucial for ensuring the health and well-being of our law enforcement. It provides a safe space and functional and supportive environment that is conducive to the demands of law enforcement. Let's be clear that this is not a big ask. As such, this new facility will foster a healthy work environment, which will enhance the department's ability to meet the expectations of public safety and offering a safe space to conduct the work of the law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Romeo. Our next speaker is Tyler Pasterok, who will be followed by Fareed, and then our last Burlington resident here in City Hall is Jane McDougall.
I didn't come here planning to speak tonight. I've been out of the loop for a bit and came tonight with the intention to just listen. However, before coming inside, I sat on the steps and listened to Black women speak about the terrible treatment of Taisha Green by the city, by my elected officials. Black women who are leaders that I have looked up to and followed since I came to this city 4 years ago, pleading for support from the community because our leaders are crushing them. It is devastating to hear about these things, about this progressive administration, how it built trust with these Black women during its campaign and turns its back on them now. I felt so much hope when Emma was elected. I felt affirmed that Burlington is a place that I belong, that leadership shared my values. In the months since this administration has taken office, we've seen you take action on safety in our community. I've grown skeptical of whose safety is the priority.
I'm going to ask that you please just direct your comments not directly to the mayor, but through me as the chair.
The experience of being at zero gravity on election night, the energy and the hope, and then being here now, listening to the experience of our trusted Black women leaders with this administration turning its back in this moment is absolutely baffling. I know that public safety is complicated and an extremely challenging issue to address, but my observation as a resident who's been paying attention to these issues for over 4 years is that the current approach is not prioritizing those most subject to harm and danger right now, and this is a clear example of that. Not only do I not see us prioritizing those most vulnerable to harm, I see those most vulnerable being treated as the threat itself. I see this city prioritizing the safety of the wealthy, of business, of property owners, and I'm disappointed.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fareed, who will be followed by Jane McDougall.
The city stalled for 2 years after promising residents of Sears Lane some basic necessities like running toilets and garbage disposal. For 2 years, they stalled, and as they closed other encampment sites, people started staying at Sears Lane, making it a very hard place to live. When the last mayor decided to close down, the community responded. A bunch of volunteers showed up. We started cleaning up the site. We even started construction of a proof of concept mini homes. We were able to download the plan. We also downloaded the plan to convert from an unsanctioned encampment to sanctioned encampment, which other municipalities have done. We were following the King County, Washington blueprint on how to do that. The University of Vermont's engineering students came down and helped us build this mini homes that we were going to show off as a possibility for our unhoused neighbors. It was very close to done when at 4 in the morning, cops showed up and dismantled our project. And I kept seeing how the community responded with our values and actually proving that we can do it, only to be crushed by some agenda that promotes property over people's lives. During this time, Director Green actually wanted to investigate me initially for fraud, but so I know the integrity of her office under her direction. And during this time, she's the only part of city government who stood with the Sears Lane people. And if we want security, we need security for all. And please, fund RABE to accomplish the original mission and do the right thing about Director Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Fareed. Our next speaker is, and last Burlington resident here in City Hall, is Jane McDougall.
I'm coming.
Take your time.
I will. Hello, my name is Jane McDougall. I am worried about the police station that's where it's now on Cherry Street. You said you wanted to build it, a new one, or modify it. The question is, where are you going to build a new one or modify the old one? The question is, you need a lot more room to modify the old one than you need to build. Cherry Street is right near Battery Park. And so where are you going to modify it? I live right near Battery Park. Where are you going to modify it?
I understand you may have questions, Ms. McDougall. Public forum isn't really the...
The point is, where I'm getting at is Cathedral Square is near Battery Park, and so isn't the police station and the fire department. You said in your last meeting that you wanted to rebuild and modify it. Where are you going to be rebuilding and modifying it? Because we live right near Battery Park. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. Just For what it's worth, public forum isn't really the time to engage in back and forth. I think I can take some liberty here to say that there are not any current plans at the moment, but a new public safety facility is under consideration for the city. That was our last Burlington resident signed up here in person to speak at public forum. We will now turn to Burlington residents online. There's one Burlington resident signed up online, and that is Sharon Busher. Sharon, I don't know that our timer is working online at the moment, but we'll keep time here, and you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, President Travers. I was going to speak to the item that has been withdrawn, which is the police station, but my comments are that every employee is entitled to safe and a good work environment. And certainly some renovations need to occur at the current station. I'm very concerned about cost. The school department years ago came forward with a very well thought out plan that was over $200 million for all of their facilities, but we couldn't afford it. And so I'm worried about this proposal. I'm worried about the fact that the Memorial Block has to find a new location for the fire station. So both public safety buildings are going to be potentially considered to be rebuilt or relocated. And I want to make sure that when you're talking about one public facility, public safety station, you're not forgetting the other. I really feel that this needs a lot more time and thought. And I know your resolution suggested something, but I wasn't convinced that the 3 non-elected officials were the right committee. I think it needed to be expanded somewhat. So I continue to be concerned about cost and also understand the need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We will now come back to City Hall. We have 6 non-Burlington residents signed up here. Our first form actually does not have a name on it, but certainly want to provide that individual an opportunity to speak. They have a Main Street address from Montpelier. Great. Could you just, so we have it for the minutes, could you state your name for the record? And you can go ahead.
Opeyyemi, Parham, Parham.
Thank you very much.
MD.
Go ahead.
I would like to speak to the issue of Taisha Green as a person who is very familiar with what happens sometimes if you happen to be a woman of color. This feels very familiar to where I went 18 years ago when I left conventional medicine after 22 years in conventional medicine. I'm 67 years old. I drove here from Montpelier because I was very concerned that I was seeing things that were very familiar. We didn't have names for institutional racism 19 years ago. But I'm saying that what I'm seeing happening could be so easily remedied if everyone listens to each other. Everyone listens to each other and does it with open heart and moves forward. What I'm hearing is requested is mediation. Mediation is always better than attorneys and lawyers. Sorry if there's any attorneys or lawyers here on the panel, on the board, in the council. I have settled many parts of my life with mediation. So what I hear is Taisha Green and her attorneys are asking for mediation with the council. That is what I would like to see, because I'd have so much more respect for Burlington if you were able to move forward from here that way. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for being here. Our next speaker is Sean Morrissey, who will be followed by Alexis Kelly.
I love you too. My name is Sean Morrissey. I am a resident of Essex, Vermont. I'm here today to speak on the matter of justice for former Director Green, a woman who continues to be harmed by the silence and inaction of this administration. You have the power to repair the many harms against Taisha and to protect Black people in this community, in Vermont, in Burlington, and in particular, Black women. And instead, you're actively choosing harm and racism.
Okay, I'm going to ask that you please not personalize the attacks, but please go ahead.
Sure. Your silence, your actions, your continued mobbing of this woman is nothing more than anti-Blackness and hate.
I'm going to ask again, please, just, I'm going to give you your time, but just if you could please not personalize the attacks here against the mayor or any other member of the council.
Sure. It is my perception that you continue to perpetuate lies. It is despicable. I find it disgusting how blatant and comfortable you are in allowing these harms to be perpetuated. Please, just go to mediation. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alexis Kelly, who will be followed by Reverend Karen Johnson.
Hello, my name is Alexis Kelly. I live in Essex, Vermont, after many years living here in Burlington, a place that I love, and a place that I'm heartbroken to learn more of the inner workings of this city and the ways that it has harmed people who are deeply important to our community. We need to take very simple steps to repair the harm that has been happening, as well as not continue to perpetuate harm against Taisha Green. And ask for mediation to me seems very, very simple and very, very reasonable. And we're all here today to express how important it is for many, many people's safety that this request be considered very seriously. I also just want to add that I'm a little bit perplexed just by the kind of rules related to this open forum right now, and people kind of being called out for saying things that are thought of as personal, when the entire reason why many of us are here today are the personal attacks against one person who used to work for this city. So I encourage you all to think about that, and thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Reverend Karen Johnson, who will be followed by Sister Sankofa.
I'm Reverend Karen G. Johnston. I speak only on these are only my words. They don't represent the First Unitarian Universalist Society, where I am the senior minister. I am a resident of Colchester. I'm thankful to be a part of this wider community. I arrived here 15 months ago and experienced deep welcome. And I would say to anyone who asked me, each week I feel like this is home. But it was also abundantly clear to me that the only reason that I could say that and feel that welcome was because of my whiteness. Because another thing that I observe about this community that I am falling in love with over and over again, and that I hope to be my home until I die many years from now, is that there is a deep hostility towards people of color, despite the concurrent wish for a different world. I want to say to you these words from Ruha Benjamin, who just won a MacArthur Genius Grant, and she deserved it. She's amazing. Remember to imagine and craft the worlds you cannot live without, just as you dismantle the ones you cannot live within. What is currently going on to former Director Green cannot be lived with, and I hope that you craft the world that has a sense of repair and builds towards the justice that is deserved here, and at the very least, mediation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sister Sankofa, who will be followed by Kathleen Voigt-Walsh.
I am Sister Sankofa from Montpelier. I am a reparations activist, community advocate, and an equity strategist. So as the death of George Floyd put many things in place to show that Black lives finally mattered, I want to ask today, do Black lives still matter? With the supposed conclusion of the rules of COVID and all of the COVID funding, with the race, equity, inclusion, and belonging, that is ongoing. That does not end. So with the change of funding, the program of funding, we will not allow the city of Burlington to go back to business as usual. We will do our best to stand in solidarity with former Director Green. We will be here. We're not going away. And I just want to say that, ask yourselves, do Black lives still matter?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathleen Voigt-Walsh, and then the last speaker for public forum will be Lydia Diamond.
Thank you so much for having an open forum. If you haven't heard of the book Weathering, I suggest you look it up. These women are talking about the challenges that they experience. It shortens their lives. If you're white, your life doesn't get shortened that way. I didn't address you properly, and I apologize for that.
No, that's no problem.
As I do want to speak to all of us who are white, we don't have to be afraid. The time has come for us to start listening to our Black sisters and to our vulnerable people, and there are so many of them. We are afraid of them. Why? I don't know why. Do we have the courage to listen with our hearts to these people? We need to listen to them. That's the only way things will change. It's the only way. Can we hear their pain? Can we hear the truth of what they say? We make mistakes. It's okay. We have to make mistakes, and then we have to go forward. But we have to look ourselves and each other in the eyes and listen. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn about courage from these people who have suffered generation after generation and continue to suffer because we're afraid of, just being white makes us all so safe. And they're not safe like that, and it's not fair. So we have a lot to learn from them about how our systems are so broken. Our systems are so broken. We all know it. We spend so much money fighting with each other and putting people in cages when we don't really have to be afraid of them. When we need to learn how to look at each other and talk to each other. We have failed them. We have failed ourselves. We have to make it right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our last speaker for public forum is Lydia Diamond.
Oh, boy. Good evening. I'm Lydia Diamond. I live in South Burlington. But I've been in Vermont 30 years. 30 years. I came here at 31 years old. I am proud to be 61. I ain't come to tell my story. I came in support of Taistia Green, because y'all did her dirty. You're disrespectful. You do not have the right to allow her to help you step your game up, help you glow and grow, and then tear her down. That's why I'm here. You tear one down, you tearing us all down, and I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it. We don't want to fight. We want to be respected. Malcolm said it best, though. The most disrespected being on the planet is the Black woman. Damn it, I'm sick of it. We don't want to fight. We always want to show love and help and do our part. Why must you? always tear us down. I am sick of being torn down. The old people, the young people, the new people, everybody needs to get on board or step aside. Get on board or step aside. It's just that simple. You either gonna do the right thing or you not. And the treatment of Taistia is despicable. She deserves reparations. And if her lawyer said 7.5, let me tell you, you need to double it. That's how ridiculous it is.
You're getting quite loud. All right.
Intentionally.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who came to public forum this evening. There's no one else signed up for public forum at this time, so we will go ahead and close it at 7:14 p.m. That brings us to the fourth item on our agenda. Our last few meetings have had some jam-packed agendas, and because we've gotten cut off at 10:30, it hasn't allowed the mayor or city councilors an opportunity for general affairs. So we are trying something new with this agenda, which we have moved the general affairs items up in our agenda. You will see in the agenda that we have combined these general affairs items with our climate and public health and safety emergency updates. We will see how this works, and after this meeting, would appreciate councilors' feedback as to whether or not this is a good model for us to follow going forward. But Mayor, we are now turning to your item on the agenda.
Thank
The floor is
you.
yours.
Thank you very much, Council President Travers. And I really appreciate the adjustment of the agenda because given the schedule over the summer and into the fall, it has meant that the mayor update hasn't been able to be verbally delivered in these meetings for several months now. So I do appreciate this, and we'll see how it goes. So first, want to start by saying with the hurricanes that have hit the southeast, including one that's about to hit Florida, I just want to let you all know that we've had mutual aid sent from the city of Burlington, including the Burlington Electric Department, Burlington Fire Department. I think also the Burlington Police Department has sent individuals from Burlington off to these communities impacted by storms. And I just want to make sure you know the hard work and mutual aid that our city is offering folks impacted in the South. In terms of just brief updates on a staffing level, before I talk about the three major goals for my administration and where we are with those pieces, we're entering the second and final round of the planning director hiring process, and that will hopefully be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks or so. I really appreciate City Attorney Jessica Brown for getting right to work with hiring one of our other additional vacancies in the city attorney's office is an assistant city attorney, and we're doing interviews now. That's another appointed role for the mayor, so we're hopefully going to bring a candidate within the next couple of weeks or so to fill out and continue to make sure we have a fully staffed attorney's office. You'll see posted this week a temporary special assistant on Overdose Prevention Center. This is a temporary role to help us successfully open this center, which was enabled by state legislation in June, to open an overdose prevention center to support folks and part of this puzzle if we have around addressing the opioid crisis, which is certainly part of our larger community safety crisis here in the city. Its position will be located in the mayor's office because it's unique and temporary and strategic in nature, and hopefully will help us move this successfully forward with a robust community engagement process and also engaging potential providers who would operate the actual space. Our department heads have finally finished off with me. There's 18 of them. The goal setting for this year, and this has included making sure that we have reviewed the core expectations of every department head, being really strategic around how do their goals align with my three primary goals on community safety, housing, and climate. Each of these goals have also been informed by the values for which I've set for this administration, which include equity and inclusion, affordability, good governance, and a robust community engagement. And you'll see on October 28th, I'll be bringing sort of the final strategy document, and I'm happy to share this with both caucuses and have a more in-depth conversation as needed. But I think what you'll find and what the city will find is that we are strategically moving in a coordinated way these 18 departments with very clear goals, so in a year's time we can see how each of the 18 departments of the city are actually advancing equity inclusion, advancing affordability through our primary issues of community safety, housing, and climate. The HR committee will know that we brought the 360 evaluation tool at the end of September. That will be used as we head into the winter with each of the department heads. And I plan to use this to help inform reappointments in that process next spring, but also just to get good, robust feedback from folks that who are managed by our department heads and really have some good feedback for professional growth of everyone involved. In terms of community safety, now moving on, I know there was an item, a resolution that was pulled from the agenda tonight, but I thought I would give an update on our emerging conversation on public safety facility needs in this community. As counselors who are on the council prior to April will know, in the pre-development agreement, there was specificity around the central fire station's needs as a building. It is in disrepair and has had a lot of deferred maintenance. Since I took office in April, it's clear we have additional buildings. I mean, the list is long, but specific to community safety, our police department building, the station, has suffered from a lot of deferred maintenance. And of course, those who know the history, this building was never built to be a police station from the beginning. So with all these significant needs, plus as we've been getting clearer around how do we deliver a more effective and efficient public community safety system with our CAPE program, our community response team, our park rangers, et cetera, it is clear that we have this opportunity to get our facility conversation right. And this is going to be what's reflected now is a lot of internal conversations with our developers at the Memorial Block around helping us advance a more flexible, comprehensive strategy around what our facility needs are. And we're well underway with those conversations internally with all impacted department heads. The developers who have been part of the Memorial Block conversations are eager to support Burlington and what we need. I've been really encouraged by our conversations. There's some real value alignment around helping Burlington, given our financial situation, put forward a really productive private-public partnership to make sure we can bring online a facility that will meet not only our current needs, but our future needs as a modern city. And we'll be advancing this forward in tandem with our Memorial Block, but they're two side-by-side projects at this point. There's a specific memo on the agenda tonight, probably under the mayor update, that gets more into detail on our unsheltered crisis we're facing here in Burlington. And I see this every morning when I walk in through City Hall Park. Since the middle of September, with the failure of the state to address this known growing emergency of hundreds of households being exited from the motel program, the GA emergency housing program by the state, we have a lot of vulnerable people now living outside. And a lot of vulnerable people include small children. They include people with health needs. They include people who have never camped before but are now forced to try to survive outside. This was a predictable emergency. I stood at a press conference on September 25th at the State House with service providers around the state to really make it clear that the only immediate and right action right now is for the governor to reverse course and rehouse these individuals, because there is no other solution. And as the weather turns, and as places like Burlington struggle to support the increased number of unhoused and unsheltered people, we have almost no options here except to do right by these individuals and recognize their human dignity. So we are about to send out a letter to all of you to consider signing on in support of calling for this kind of action by the governor. The letter also itemizes the impact, disproportionate impact, that this emergency has had on the city of Burlington. So we'll be circulating it. The majority of my department heads have also co-signed this with me because we really wanted to make sure Burlington's voice is strong about the impact this has had. Very briefly, Kara Alarswani, for our BWD director, has convened a late night task force, which is a group of businesses who, largely bars, but the late night scene, if you will, to really talk about how they've been experiencing community safety and to get their feedback on a number of issues. And some of the feedback has been helpful, including a need for late night mental health resources would be very helpful, clarifying where the trouble and trickiness is happening. It's happening outside the bars, but it's often coming into the bars, but not starting there. They're supportive of the charter change around prohibiting firearms in places that serve alcohol, but also are worried around who enforces that if we take that forward. So this hopefully is the beginning of continued conversations with these folks to make sure that we can be responsive and adapt to make sure that they get the kind of support they need, which include even trainings that can be coordinated by the city on de-escalation which they said that the city used to offer apparently, but we can bring back and really help in the immediate time. The Burlington Youth Collaborative is a local combination of local youth service providers who do programming for school-age youth here in Burlington. They have been meeting and trying to address a number of issues and gaps in programming, but their focus right now is identifying critical programming that will help them take action to prevent the involvement of youth in street-level violence and promote alternatives for youth to be involved. I've asked the city to be able to participate in these meetings not as a member, but just as a support, and to know and to hear firsthand what the city can be doing and leveraging within our assets, be that BCA programming, parks programming, physical space, whatever that might be, as we imagine in the future what might be at Memorial Block, but more in the immediacy, how can we stand side by side with them to interrupt cycles of violence, to better meet these young people's needs, to give them better economic opportunities than what some of them are behaviors they're falling into. So this is quite important to me, especially because many of these youth have really fallen between the gaps of a broken schedule within our downtown high school as it got relocated. And some of these youth are also coming from families that are immigrant or refugees, and I want to make sure that we are handling this very seriously to support both these youth and their families for better outcomes right now. I'll do more in my write-up for all of you on hotspots so you can see that. And just briefly on the community safety forums, which we started 2 weeks ago, we had over 200 people attend the first one, which I really appreciate. Our next one will be November 7th. We'll focus on anti-violence, youth-involved violence, and victim services. In January, we'll speak to drug trafficking, the opioid crisis, and the city's response on those issues. And as I said before, we're going to keep holding these every 2 months until there's nothing left to talk about for community safety. And I welcome suggestions from counselors on themes that you think would be helpful for forum purposes. Briefly, just on budget and finances, because I didn't have a chance to mention, at the end of August, we did hold a budget summit. It was the most riveting meeting ever. Just to add a little humor, but department heads and division heads, we filled a room of 30 or so money people, if you will, to talk about how we're going to address our budget and planning differently. This included starting earlier our budgeting process for fiscal year 26, the timeline itself, reviewed the city's new budget dashboard, which I hope you can still find on the new website, but it's an amazing piece of work by Nancy Stetson from our data division and Brad Kupenberger from Clerk Treasurer's Office to really transform how we talk about our budget and for our average folks in the city be able to see where we spend our money. And it's very user-friendly, and I encourage counselors who are not on board of finance, who have not seen this, to take a minute to go interface it. We will keep improving it ahead of fiscal year 26. But it's a great way to know how we have prioritized our spending, and then hopefully over years know where we've been investing more money in certain departments. We also briefly talked a bit about equitable budgeting practices and participatory budgeting practices, which are priorities for my administration over the next several years to start to adopt and better understand. And I'm really hoping that we will get to a place where we can incorporate that into parts of our community engagement process so that the community can help us set our financial priority needs for Burlington, especially as we move into more multi-year budgeting, so that we can get a handle out of these one-year cycles, can get a handle on where are our priorities so we can invest money into our long-term needs. Let's see, just briefly, because it's coming up on October 28th, we've named this effort the Modern Gov Initiative. This, as counselors will have received the operational efficiency study, the final one that finally came in early September. A week ago, we issued a city employee for all departments across the city to give feedback on how do we modernize this city. The operational efficiency study is one piece. It only studied 7 different general fund departments. It's useful to a point, but it is not the end all. And it sparks a much needed larger conversation around how do we look at the structures of government. At the budget summit, Brad actually shared a very important graph, which was in the memo sent out with employees, which hopefully you all saw, which projects the next 10 years for our general fund budget and how our revenues and expenditures look. And if you look at that closely, there's a structural gap that starts to build over the next 10 years, which is problematic because if we do nothing, we start to continue to have budget gaps year after year. And that's reflective of us needing to look at how we deliver services, what we prioritize, and right-sizing our government. And that is what the Modern Gov initiative is attempting to start to do after we get through this period of time of seeking feedback from department heads, city employees, and then all of you on council on October 28th. This is going to be a multi-year process. No decisions have been made yet. I really value collaboration and really phasing this in a way that makes sense and is in line with our city's priorities. Last piece on this, there will be a labor management advisory committee helping to really map out the phases of how we do this, and union leadership, I really appreciate, has been right there with us to make sure we roll this out in a way that employees feel engaged and fully in the loop about what is coming next. The next thing I wanted to speak a bit to is our Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office. I usually give updates on all of our departments, which will be, the rest will be in writing to you. But I think it's really important to just name a few pieces around where our REIB is at the moment. When I became mayor in April, I started in May working with our existing staff. We have 3 staff positions that were filled at the time when I came in. And we took a deep dive into the work that the department has done for the last 5 years, the unfinished business from the 2020 resolutions, understanding the impact and where the best and most impact can be done as city government, and being clear about how do we move this critical work forward in a way that's sustained and not going anywhere. The positions for RIB, which include 4, and we're hiring the 4th position, are general fund supported positions. They are general fund supported positions in fiscal year 25, this fiscal year, and they will be going forward. They are no longer on one-time funds. And I just want to clarify that part because by expression, this is a very important investment for this city to make sure that we sustained equity work and the expertise of folks who bring that to the city. There is unfinished work, and there'll be a memo documenting all of this from the 2020 resolutions, including an outstanding report from the Reparations Task Force that's coming in a matter of weeks, how we've used empowerment funds and reinvested dollars. Part of this deep dive with staff was to really get a handle on what has been done and what's unfinished. It is my commitment to steward this forward and to do it as quickly and as responsibly as humanly possible. I also strongly believe that equity work goes beyond anyone who works within REIB. This needs to be a full commitment by every leader and department head in the city. And when you see the goals that we've developed collaboratively together, equity is reflected in multiple goals by every single department head. And a couple quick examples of this, the clerk's office, for example, has, and they each have about, 5 to 8 goals each. One of the specific goals is expanding all resident voting and language access education for city elections. This is a part that the clerk's department should hold to make sure that language access is robust, but an educational component for folks who've now been enfranchised to finally vote, who are residents here but may not be citizens and where English may not be their first language. We've also, in the planning department, with a collaboration with REIB, developed an equity index tool with also the data team to help create robust engagement strategies and support the city's efforts in moving forward using an equity index tool of how we do planning projects and how we think about the impact on communities that have not had a voice and have often not been engaged and often hold marginalized identities. Those are just a couple of examples, but I want to again reiterate, equity work is all of our work to do. We've invested in specific equity positions, and I'm increasing the expectation among other department heads that this be well understood and that we lean further into equity inclusion work. And then just to wrap up, because I know I've now dominated, but I'm making up for lost time, Council President Travers. Let's see. The last thing I just want to note, because I know a couple of you were able to attend this meeting, we are almost ready to bring to the full council the legislative agenda that we have drafted so far. We ran it by the Burlington incumbents, the state delegation at this moment, for feedback and input. A couple of you were there as well and participated, which I appreciate. I plan on October 28th to request a work session, bit of time with all of you to have some dialogue on what our priorities should be on that agenda. And that should put us hopefully in line with having something that I would like you to affirm, vote in some manner in November perhaps, so we can then get things in place with whoever is elected to represent Burlington, and then get the sequence in place for bill submissions and strategy and the hiring of a lobbyist to make sure that our interests in Montpelier are well positioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. That takes us to item 5 on our agenda, which is City Council General Affairs. Just as with the mayor's portion of the agenda, this period also includes our climate and public health and safety emergency updates. And again, would appreciate councilors' feedback on this item. Just as during public forum, I'll ask that comments to general city affairs focus on city affairs. If it doesn't address the city specifically, I will ask that comments please at least be looked at through a local lens. With that, are there any councilors that wish to speak to general city affairs, to include climate and public health and safety emergency updates? Councilor Grant and then Councilor Bergman.
Thank you. I just want to, let's see, I always focus. Public safety. The last few public safety committee meetings have been extremely informative. I still am strongly recommending that the residents of Burlington watch the July 18th meeting, to watch the recruitment presentation and also the presentation, recruitment presentation from the police department's team, and then also a presentation from the fire department for 2 upcoming programs that we're hoping to get off the ground soon called Prevent and City Link. Once again, that was July 18th meeting. The last meeting was on September 19th, very detailed, full update from the fire department's chief, Chief LaChance. This included describing needed repairs that the mayor just alluded to. In particular, there was an apparatus floor which holds personnel, equipment, and vehicles. And we are already 4 to 5 months in on a 1-year temporary repair. So I think that when we talk about replacing buildings and the repairs to buildings, this has to be part of an overall comprehensive conversation, because there are some pretty severe needs with our fire department as well. He also discussed fleet replacement issues, lots of data around the response to possible and actual overdoses. Always has very, very interesting details in terms of what's going on with the fire department and the various teams that they operate to contribute to our community safety system. I was also very pleased to see a detailed strategic plan for recruiting lateral transfers in the fire department. This included a social media plan, a plan for digital advertising to advertise on media that they know firefighters read. The in-house video was great and not only focused on the being a firefighter at the Burlington Fire Department, but also the city of Burlington and how Burlington's a great place to be. Both those things were really highlighted in that video. We had a conversation as well with Chief Murad, who reviewed his monthly report. I don't think it's any secret to anyone who watches these meetings, my relationship with the chief can sometimes be difficult. My first request for just a simple monthly number of the number of applications to BPD was denied, as well as some other things. So we're going to try again. Our next meeting, which is scheduled for October 17th, which is next week. Some things that we might be talking about. The fire department has launched something called Burlington Community Connect, which you can Google. This is something that's going to be open to residents and businesses, and what they're doing is asking people to create an account and enter information that matters the most, so that if there's an emergency at your home or business location, they have important information that will be able to help them assist in the most efficient way possible. So we'll be hearing some more information on that, but in the meantime, you can Google Burlington Community Connect, and it will come up. Requested that a link also be put on the website, and Chief LaChance has responded to that request, and we'll be working on it. And the final item is I attended the UVM Community Coalition meeting, which is a meeting of a group of people who work for UVM and also the University of Vermont representatives from their Student Government Association, other community residents from wards 1 and 8. And I offered a lot of feedback around questions about community safety, and I've sent over an email about the idea of see if UVM would be willing to have a community safety forum for students, because students rarely attend the forums that are held here in Contoy's Auditorium. So we'd like to see if we can involve them. The off-campus students, especially who live in parts of wards 2, 3, and wards 8, have been really affected by some of our hotspots. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grant. I have Councilor Bergman, and then I saw Councilor Shannon's hand up.
Great, thank you, President Travers. So we all hear about the next hurricane that is about to hit, another major one, and there is a funding problem with FEMA, right? That is a backdrop for two conferences that we are holding here in the city, well, it's actually in South Burlington, but it's right over the border at the Doubletree. One on a week from tomorrow, the CATMA Transportation Summit, where there will be a number of important workshops and presentations, as well as our mayor speaking, but TDM and the whole public transit crisis and funding crisis are going to be part of that agenda. It should be really important. There's at the very end, and it's always at the end, that there is going to be a legislative panel. It's the last panel of the day, and with 4 legislators, and is an opportunity, I think, for us to network, but also to weigh in about the absolutely backward way that the state of Vermont and our region seem to be approaching transportation, in particular with public transportation and transportation demand management. And right after that, the next 2 days, the Renewable Energy Vermont Conference is going to be held in the same location. And we have, I think, been uniformly disappointed with the progress on weatherization that has been made with the rental weatherization program, which was supposed to be just the most leaky buildings, right? And we are woefully behind just even them. This conference has a major focus on workforce development. It also has a focus on thermal energy networks, and I think this also is a place where we can network. We can begin to understand that when we work together with other communities and other forces, that we can do an awful lot. And so I want to encourage all of you to join me at these. The REV conference is actually free for public officials, and the CATMA conference, it has a 25% discount, and it's a reimbursable expense for us. It's not a cheap conference, the CATMA one, but it is, I think, really important. And then I want to proactively thank you for what I believe will be your support for an important community project, renovation project, business development, racial equity project that we are funding in the consent agenda regarding the building at 1 Intervale Avenue. This has seen an awful lot of community engagement and excitement, and I think it will be or is one of the models. There are many ways to get to places, but a model for the way that we can deal with a number of issues that include graffiti and assorted blight that we face. So I want to thank you for your support in advance of getting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. I have Councilor Shannon in the queue. Please go ahead, Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, President Travers. I wanted to draw the council's attention as well as the public's attention to a letter that we received from the Burlington Police Officers Association, which is our police union, regarding recruiting for our police department. And this letter was from Officer Michael Moran, who he was an assistant trainer at the recent Vermont Police Academy, which was training 44 recruits from across the state. And in the process of doing that, he took the initiative to talk to the new recruits about whether or not they had applied in Burlington, why they didn't apply in Burlington if they had not. And I think his letter was quite informative. He noted that none of the locals in our area who were now at the police academy for another department, none of them had applied to BPD. And he inquired as to why. He tells us in his letter, after a short discussion with said recruits, it became overtly clear that they all shared the same concerns about working in the Queen City, a major lack of support from both politicians and the community. Many recruits mentioned that surrounding communities have a proven track record of support from both town managers and community members, where Burlington does not. And he also goes on to really lay out the path for how we can change this in Burlington. And I do think that there is a broad agreement that we want to recruit police officers in Burlington, and we want to support our officers who work here now and those who would be coming to this department. We want them to know that they will be supported by the city council and by the mayor and by our community, and that in order to do that, we need to be more vocal about it. He says, I believe that the perception of the city council and the mayor's office is a major deterrent for people who live in the area and want to pursue law enforcement careers to serve their local communities. And then I'll kind of skip down a little bit. The first and clear step to fix the issues that the Burlington Police Department faces is to fix the optics that officers are not supported among politicians. We need outspoken members of the mayor's office and city council to speak up and speak out about the need for qualified officers with emotional connections to the area. With the new administration in the Queen City, I believe there is an opportunity to rebuild this department with outspoken support for the officers who are on the streets on a daily basis. Burlington once was the gold standard of policing in the state of Vermont, and it can be again with continued outspoken support and deliberate, meaningful actions, votes by politicians of this city. And I hope that we can deliver on that. And thank you for the time. I'm also, I'll just say briefly, looking forward to working with the mayor and the administration, who I know wants to find solutions for the police station. And we have had this resolution going back and forth, and I know, I think you will be speaking to this later, President Travers, but I'm very optimistic about our path forward there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon. I do not have any other councillors in the queue at the moment. There is just one comment that I wanted to briefly make. The agenda was amended earlier on to remove from the agenda a resolution that we have postponed a couple meetings now with respect to the development of a new police station. I just want to provide a little bit of context behind the removal of that. I want to thank the mayor and her administration for their ongoing work reviewing a new comprehensive public safety facility. And I appreciate the opportunity to sort of work with the mayor on our resolution and that ongoing process, and to find what I think is a path forward that made me at least comfortable with removing that item from the agenda. I think the intention behind that resolution was threefold from my perspective. One was to ensure that our review of a new public safety facility was not just limited to the lens of the Memorial Block pre-development agreement and the replacement of our central fire station, but to look comprehensively at all the long-term and short-term needs of both our fire department and our police department. Second, the resolution was intended to ensure that council had a seat at the table in these critical discussions, including by considering the voices of folks dedicated to our community who have relevant professional expertise to share. And then the third item, given, from my perspective, the urgency of this issue and the fact that our police station and fire station both are flagged by current employees regularly as a hurdle to some of the recruitment and retention efforts that we've heard referenced here, a commitment to our hearing further updates here at the council with respect to how this is moving forward. And so I'm grateful that in our discussions with the mayor that the administration has committed to coming back before the council by the end of this year to give us an update as to how the ongoing process to really comprehensively review this item is moving forward. So thank you, Mayor, for those commitments and our opportunity to work together, and we'll look forward to continuing to do that. Any other comments on Councilor General Affairs? Seeing none, we will move to, I'm sorry, Councilor Grant, you were at time at over 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Councilor Grant, I think. I'm sorry, Councilor Grant. I'm going to proceed. We are at our 5-minute rule, Councilor Grant, and I'm going to proceed. We are now going to move to our consent agenda. Is there a councilor with a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, and to take the actions indicated.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor say, sorry, was there discussion on that motion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. That then takes us to our deliberative agenda. With 2 items removed from our deliberative agenda, we only have 1 item. And this is, let me just turn to that item of the agenda here. It's the creation, item 7.2, creation of a library outreach specialist position and approval for a contract with Howard Center, Inc. And on this item, we have Director Mary Danko. Thank you, Director Danko, for being here. Mayor, am I correct in turning the floor here to Mary? Okay. Mary, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today to discuss this proposed initiative. I'd like to express my gratitude to the mayor's office for their ongoing support, and also to all you city councilors who have been reaching out to me for your advocacy for the library and understanding the challenges that we face. And your support will be invaluable as we explore new solutions. I do want to just give a little bit of a backdrop for folks. Some of this you may already know, but I think it is worth saying. The library is open to everyone. It's a democratic it's a cornerstone to our democracy, so everyone can come into the library, and we strive to have a welcoming environment. We're one of 3 locations downtown offering city bathrooms alongside City Hall and City Hall Park. And we are what's considered a limited public forum, and that's through case law. So even though we are a government building and we can let everyone in, we can have reasonable rules of behavior, and we do have those. And before COVID, we worked very hard to have an ordinance that is specific to the library, that has certain rules of behavior so that everyone feels welcome. And if you don't abide by these rules, you do get trespassed. And the level of egregiousness of the behavior is, there is a certain period of trespass that you would have to have. You may appeal those trespasses through me and also through the Library Commission if you don't like the ruling that I have. You also may go through restorative justice. We want people to use the library. We want pathways for people to use the library, but we also are always in balance. It has to be welcoming to everyone. I don't want to talk about all the components of the ordinance, but I do want to speak to one, which is that we are a substance-free place. You cannot be under the influence at the library. You can't have drug paraphernalia on you. You can't have drugs on you. And when we see that activity, we do trespass for that. We have full-time security. The library staff is trained to notice behaviors and work to get people to comply if we can, or we do trespasses. Unfortunately, we cannot maintain our space when we're not there. So we do our very best when we have these open hours, but I do understand that sometimes people are trying to get to the book drop when we are closed, and we're just not there to manage that. We have asked Burlington Police Department to do drive-bys as much as they can as they're in that downtown core, and they do their best, but as we know, their staffing is stretched too. We also encourage anybody who's at the library when we're open, if they see negative behaviors, please tell us about them, because then we can do something. I've gotten several emails in the past few weeks that people telling me of something that's happened at the library a day ago or 2 days ago. It's more challenging to deal with those then. So if you see something, if you go up to the security guard, go up to one of us, call us maybe after you leave, we will really work to work with that person. Sometimes when our security guards are doing the rounds, they've just made a round and something pops up. But we really are working hard in this endeavor. So as we think about this community safety and the library safety, we're trying to pilot these new programs, and they require collaborations with various city departments. We've been working with the mayor's office, the city attorney's office, human resources, and now we're trying to collaborate with the Howard Center on this particular initiative here. And we're really grateful for everybody's engagement. And I think as we acknowledge the complexity of these situations that we're dealing with, we're really thinking that we want to have innovative thinking around this. We want people to have an open mindset. So as we roll out these initiatives, I'm asking for patience and understanding from you all and from the community. And also, when you're in these innovative stages, we also welcome feedback. Let us know your thoughts as we go through this process. We really think that there's a potential for great outcomes and significant positive changes that will benefit the entire community. So this idea of bringing this community resource specialist into the library has been going on in public libraries for a long time. In San Francisco, they've been doing this for over 10 years now. It's been going on around Chicago, Vancouver, Denver, Georgetown. We had a really nice conversation with the person at the Hoboken Public Library who's had a program like this for a couple years. A lot of what this person would be doing is the warm handoffs to other agencies to make sure people are getting connected to the services that they need. It also will allow librarians to do the librarian work that we do. We're information specialists, but we're not social workers. We want to measure this as we work through it. We're thinking about what those measurements are. Is it how many referrals? Is it the relationships this person is building in the library? But oftentimes we see people who are maybe just on the brink of needing help, and having somebody embedded in the library can help to build that relationship, that stability, so that maybe there's an intervention that we can do a little bit earlier. I also want to mention that this is a resource for our whole community. We imagine other community members coming up and talking to this person and saying something like, you know what, I have an aging parent and I'm seeing these signs. Is there something we can do, or can I talk to you about it? Or maybe it's someone else who comes up and says, look, I have a cousin and I think they're in a relationship that isn't great. This person could talk to them too. So this is to provide services for our whole community. By having this Howard Center contract, the Howard Center person will have access to records of Howard Center patients if that's needed. They'll have supervision from the Howard Center, and of course, they'll have peer support. We're grateful for the funding from the mayor that is going to help support this position for the first year, and we also have a private donor through the Friends of the Fletcher Free Library that is providing $25,000 for the position as well. I think I will leave it at that and take any questions if that is appropriate with President
Great.
Travers.
Thank you very much for being here, Mary, and thank you for all the work you do at our amazing library. I think before we go to a motion, I'd be happy to open the floor to councilors for any questions or comments they have. I see Councilor Litwin, and then we'll go to Councilor Doherty, and then Councilor Broderick, and then Councilor McKnight.
Thanks, and I just want to echo those sentiments because I've met with you a few times at the library, and what the public may not know is how incredibly busy you are doing a wide variety of tasks that I would not imagine a library director have to do. And so I thank you for stepping into that gap while the city figures out how to address the lack of social service needs in many capacities, and you point out a lot of really helpful reasons why the library is an important space for all. I do, however, want to just ask and sort of also share some long-term concern, which is, one is that I'm hopeful that we're moving towards an overdose prevention center operating in the city. And so in my mind, I'm wondering if you're seeing an off-ramp for this at some point, and a transition for this type of work to a different space, maybe not more appropriate, but a different space. And then additionally, some of the cities that you mentioned in your examples, or who are providing these wonderful services, have library budgets that far exceed the Burlington library budget. San Francisco, for example, has over $100 million library budget. Vancouver, I think, is in the same neighborhood or slightly less. And so our meager library budget is, I think, $1.5 to $2 million. And so I would just love to hear sort of your thoughts on, is this something that's sustainable for the Fletcher Free Library and a city as small as Burlington?
So yes, when we were doing our research, the things that tend to come to the top are the bigger libraries, and so I would say Hoboken was one of the smaller ones, although I would say in some of the bigger systems, they are going out to the small branch libraries as well. I think one of the things we always try and do at the library when we pilot things and when we try and be innovative is really keep an open mind for that first year. So I haven't thought about an off-ramp per se, but I am open to what happens. I think this is new for the Howard Center too. And as you know, we have the Howard Street outreach folks, and we utilize them all the time. They have been busier than usual, so when we call them, sometimes they're not available. So I'm not quite sure how it will look in the future, and I'm hoping, and I certainly always with my staff and when we do things is really push us to keep open-minded in that way. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And how much time do I have, Mr.
2 minutes.
President? 2 minutes?
Yeah.
So I would just, I'll actually use less than 2 minutes and just say that I guess what I would be looking for for our long-term goal is to support people, but also through the lens of fiscal prudence, and that we do start to think about an off-ramp. When I start to think about just the security expenses that we have had to incur at the library, I think those contracts are in the hundreds of thousands. And then additionally, this new position, which ultimately I will support, but is another over $100,000 of investment. And this is for a semi-non-traditional use for a small group of people. And so I hope that we will be mindful as we build budgets and as we move forward that we consider off-ramps and consider ways in which to be fiscally prudent while being human towards our neighbors. Thank you.
And I think that's fair, and it is only a one-year contract, and there's only one-time funds, so already we are thinking about how do we, if it does keep going, which I would like to see a pilot be more than a year, so we're already looking at how do we continue to fund this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Litwin. I have Councilor Doherty, and then Broderick, McKnight, and then Newbeezer. Go ahead, Councilor Doherty.
Thank you, Director Danko, and I also want to echo what others have shared about my appreciation for your work and for all the work of your wonderful staff at the Fletcher Free Library. The Fletcher Free Library, you know, for me personally, and for my family and my spouse and my children, is one of the most important institutions in our city. So any conversation that centers around your work feels very personal to me. And I'm just incredibly grateful for the role that you and your staff play in our community. Not too long ago, I was with my youngest child, my then 9-year-old, now 10-year-old Malachi, on a weekend, a rainy weekend afternoon, doing one of our favorite things, which was being at the library, taking out books, reading together, playing with a gigantic chess set. And while we were there, someone came in and was clearly experiencing a crisis, a very loud, vocal crisis of some kind. I, of course, don't know what the details of that crisis were, but it was certainly disruptive, to say the least, and distressing. And I saw your staff, the young man who works security, another member of your staff, intercede with this person in a way that, again, from a distance, struck me as incredibly compassionate, incredibly kind, and turned out it appeared to be incredibly effective. And I just wanted to pass along that observation for whatever it's worth, and I passed it along at the time to the folks as we were leaving the library and expressed my gratitude for them. It also struck me that it seemed to be well beyond the ambit of what we would traditionally expect or consider to be part of a librarian's responsibility or the responsibility of a library staff. And I am hoping, I've read the paperwork associated with this proposal, and I'm just hoping if you could put a little bit more detail for me and perhaps for other counselors on exactly what, in a sort of real-world situation, what you expect this outreach specialist to do on sort of a day-to-day basis, maybe in a situation like the one I just described. I think that would be helpful for me, at least to think about my view on this proposal. Thank you.
Sure, and thanks for sharing that story. And if I can just pull back a little bit, sometimes what we see at the library, I like to describe, well, the way I describe this, I think of this as a Venn diagram. Right now we've got people who are unhoused, we have people who have mental health issues, and we have people who are suffering from addiction. And some people reside in any one part of that Venn diagram. What becomes very challenging is when someone comes into the library and they are just acting in a way that is maybe erratic, right? In a way that doesn't seem normal. This becomes a very nuanced situation. Is this person having a mental health issue? Are they having an addiction issue? It's really tough for us. Like I said, we're librarians. My hope is that this position they're trained to kind of suss that out a little bit better, right? They're going to be able to know, and in fact, because they work for the Howard Center, they might already have a relationship with them, or they might have people that they work with at the Howard Center that have a relationship with them because they're talking to their peers about the different folks that we see downtown. So I think there's that part. They're going to be really great at that, and they're going to also be working, so hopefully they can de-escalate, hopefully because they have a relationship or have built a relationship, because this person has been coming in regularly to use the restroom or use the computers. That will be a good thing. And then they can also work with security if there is something that really is to a point where you're not complying and we have to, work with you on that way. So I would say those are the big things that I'm hopeful that come out of this with this position. There was another thought that I had, and I'm sorry, it just flew out of my head.
You're coming up on time, Councilor Doherty, if you could just, any last comment?
Forgive me, but is the expectation that this person is going to be staffed on site?
Yes, yep. Okay. They will be in the library.
All right, thank you, Councilor Doherty. Next, we have Councilor Broderick, to be followed by Councilor McKnight.
Thank you, President Travers. Director Danko, first of all, I wholeheartedly support having this position. I think it's an excellent continuation of the work that your staff has already done to support our community, and I agree with other councilors' thoughts that it will be even better when we have someone who it's in their job description to work with all members of our community in these situations. So I have a couple questions about the job position itself that I was a little confused on. So is this a Howard Center employee who is now being transferred to the city of Burlington, or is this like a city employee who just has that type of experience?
So this is a person who we're contracting with the Howard Center to have this person embedded at the library. Another way to think about it is the Howard Center also embeds folks in the schools, so that's what it would be. We're contracting with them.
Will this be a union position?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. If they're not a union position, I hope that the city can work with AFSCME on ways that we can make it a union position, them coming from the Howard Center. So my next question is about the supervisory role of the Howard Center. I know that all I really know is that it's a weekly type role for the Howard Center. What does that exactly look like, and how much support are they going to offer this individual?
So it's 37.5 hours a week that the person will be in the library, and they will have supervision. And you're asking me how many hours, and I don't know the answer to that, but I can get that to you. And I guess I would just add that, again, being in this beginning stages of this is, we're also hoping, we plan on being a support to this person as well. Like right now already, our library admin team is doing a lot of this work, and we do a lot of work with security as well. So we want this to be a successful program, so we want to make sure this person is supported in all ways, not just all ways, not just from the Howard Center, that the library gives them support to as we work through it together.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Broderick. We next have Councilor McKnight, to be followed by Councilor Newbeezer.
Thank you, President Travers, and thank you, Director Danko, for being here. I know I'm repeating what others have said, but I just want to express deep gratitude for everything you do leading the library forward. Perhaps best described as my 6-year-old daughter says, the Fletcher Free is literally the coolest. So just deep appreciation for all that, and also for you and your team really finding what I see as an innovative proactive way to start solving some of the complex problems that we're seeing at the library, and the issues that the patrons there are facing. When you're talking about making the library welcome to everyone in Burlington, that's obviously such a key piece of the institution's mission, especially the lifelong learners in our community, which is stated right in the Fletcher Free mission. What has been top of mind for me as I think about this are the many parents we've heard from sitting in your same chair, talking about, including a father we had here at a council meeting maybe a month ago or so, who said his fourth grade daughter, who has always loved going to the library, doesn't always feel safe going there anymore, and that, it used to be she would beg him to go, and now it's kind of his idea to go, and he has to convince her. So I'm hoping you could speak specifically and maybe give a few examples to how this role will improve the library experience for lifelong learners like that family or others who might be using the library as perhaps a jumping off point for a job search, or there to attend a community event or a musical performance or other type of programming that you all are so amazing at offering.
So let me say it's heartbreaking when I hear that, and I will say it's heartbreaking for my staff as well. They show up every day to work giving 1,000%. I can't even express the gratitude that I have for them, because as you've mentioned, they're doing all their work, all their programming, selecting all the wonderful books, trying to make the library as welcoming as possible, and feeling like sometimes we're up against something that we can only control so far. So that's really hard. But I do recognize that sometimes coming to the library, you see sad things, and you sometimes hear sad things. And I sometimes I hear parents say to their kids, "Looks like that person's having a really bad day today." Or sometimes I'll hear them say, "You know what? We're gonna talk to the librarian about what we saw." Those aren't the best solutions, I know, but I hope parents try that. I feel like the library is a microcosm of our community, and the way that we approach the sadness that we see is something that we can all work through together. And I guess for this position, I hope that they're another boots on the ground person who's helping us manage the different things. So we have really great security that we work really hard with, and we start always with a place of compassion and kindness, but also with being mindful we do have rules. And I think that this position would do that same thing, but also by being that kind of grounded space, grounded person, that hopefully that regular interaction will hopefully prevent things from getting more escalated than sometimes, as Councilor Doherty mentioned, people do get agitated, and I'm hoping that this position will help prevent some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Councilor Newbeezer.
Thank you, Council President, and Director Danko, thank you so much. I don't want to be too repetitive, and I was worried that by the time it got to me, it was just going to be a series of us saying how wonderful you all are and how wonderful the work you do is and your staff is. But I have been, not to be comparative, but you're in all these new meetings as a newly elected city councilor, and just floored with you as someone leading a really critical institution within our city, both in public meetings and private meetings. And I'm really, really excited about the work ahead for the library. And so I will be supporting this position. I'm incredibly grateful that on top of doing really good work that is, like much of the work we do as a city underfunded, you're still coming to the council with really an eye toward fiscal responsibility and being mindful that we don't have the ability to write a blank check to any department or sort of arm of the city, for lack of a better term. And so I really appreciate that thoughtfulness and anything else that we can do as a council to be supportive to you in the future. I'd like to hear it. So I'll end there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. I do not have any other councilors in the queue at the moment. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councilor Bergman.
I hesitate because we're doing so well. But I want to thank you, Mary, and I want to echo your thoughts that you hope that this is not a one-year pilot project. I say that because every problem that has been identified at this table tonight is deep-seated, is complex, and is not going away in a year. And we cannot expect the library to be doing the type of mental health work as librarians. Nobody should ever think that that is a reasonable approach to dealing with it. And as you all know, I've got 4-year-old and 3-year-old grandkids, and I bring them to the library, and my kids were raised there. And it's really important that the supports that are necessary in this time, when we have this convergence, one might even call it a real decay, some might say a decay in the empire, that is besetting us. And so we've got to build by looking to the future. And so I'm really appreciative of that visioning, of that openness that you articulated, to see what's going to happen and then to adjust and try to make it work. And perhaps with the work that we're doing with the governor, maybe, and with legislators, that folks will understand that although we're the biggest city in the entire state of Vermont, that we cannot do it on the backs of the city's taxpayers alone. And thank you for carrying on.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Carpenter.
Thanks. I don't want to repeat what my colleagues are, but just two things. One is a point of clarification that for the public, the library is sort of reorganizing security services, and actually, I hope that's what goes away first, is that's almost several $100,000, and we need it absolutely, but the social work position actually does probably have a longer life to it as a former social worker, and so I think having the library in that role is important. And you mentioned other items or other tasks that could happen in the library, and I think there's a dearth of that. Where, as someone whose first job was to help set up 211, but we were doing it on 5x8 index cards. That's how old I am. I just think there's a role for the library in that as well.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the support, because I do believe that the problems of the world get solved by people who have imaginations, and those who read have imaginations. So reading is really fundamental, and so thank you for all this support. We want a community of big readers.
Thank you, Director Danko. I think that may be a good last word on this item. As the individual who read the proposed motion on civic clerk out loud in the Board of Finance, I can tell you it's a mouthful. So if folks are open to it, I think we would just be open to a motion to approve and authorize the execution of the contract as outlined on civic clerk. Any counselor willing to make that motion? Counselor Barlow. Well, I'll go Counselor Broderick, and then seconded by Counselor Barlow. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Yeah.
Counselor
Yes.
Litwin, you are almost at time.
Okay, I'm wondering if I want to make a motion to amend or not. So, but basically, I'd be hard pressed as somebody who works in public health not to ask about an evaluation of like where do we go from here once the year is up? This is a pilot project. We evaluate pilot projects. So I didn't get a chance to ask that. More so, I forgot to ask it until later. If the answer is that we have a plan for evaluation, I'm happy to not offer that motion. But otherwise, I'd like to amend it to include a requirement for setting up an evaluation metric and measuring our success with this investment.
Okay. Perhaps before we get to a motion, Director Danko, if I could turn to you, is there any response you give as to what your plans may be over the course of this next year to evaluate this, perhaps report back to the council as to the success or opportunities for growth?
We have a draft idea of what we're going to measure based on what we spoke with from the folks at Hoboken, but it's not systemically in place in any way, shape, or form. I would say it's in draft form.
Okay.
So I'd like to offer an amendment to just include, so my amendment would be to include a requirement to report back to the council to identify, what are our key performance indicators, how do we measure success, and then report back to the council ahead of the end of that project, no specific date, so that the council has information about how successful, I hope this program will be so successful that we want to fund it for a whole nother year.
Okay.
Is that in order? Have I followed the rules?
It is in order. So there is a motion. I will see if there's a second. If there is, I will ask that it please be reduced to writing and sent to the clerk for inclusion here. But I think folks likely have the general gist, which would be to add to the recommended action language asking that Mary Danko, as director of the Fletcher Free Library, report back by the end of the 12-month contract on measures by which this position will be evaluated.
Yeah, to establish those actually before the end, and then I trust that they can do that work. So I ask that they establish some metrics, work with the administration potentially to establish what those metrics should be for success, and other public health officials, maybe ComStat, and then report back before the end of that contract so that this council has data to make decisions on. We love data-driven decision-making in this room.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor from Councilor Litwin to add that to the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilor Carpenter. Before I turn to councilors for any questions or comments on the motion, do folks have a general idea here of what's being proposed by Councilor Litwin in terms of establishing metrics by which this position is evaluated and then reporting those metrics back to the council within the course of the next year? Is that right, Councilor Litwin?
You said it much more succinctly and
great.
elegantly than I did.
Does anyone need to see that in writing before we proceed here? Do folks have the general idea? Councilor Grant?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. So with that, I'll turn to you, Councilor Grant.
Or more of a confirmation, I assume there's a detailed job description?
We're working through it with Howard Center, and it'll be because it's a contract with them, it'll be in the scope of work in the contract, yes.
Okay. I guess I would think that that would be sufficient because that would have guidelines with regards to how the position would be looked at. And
I think it may or may not, and I want...
Okay, hold on 1 second,
my
Councilor
apologies.
Litwin.
I guess you've answered my question. I guess that would be my concern. Is it necessary in light of that detailed job description and contract? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Is there any other councilor that wishes to be recognized on this item? Councilor Doherty and then Councilor McKnight.
I don't know if this will be helpful or not, but I'm just rereading, I guess this is following up on Councilor Grant's question, point of order. I'm just rereading the recommended action, which is to approve and authorize Mary Danko, Director of Fletcher Free Library, to execute a contract and any related documents needed to carry out said contract. And I guess my point of order or observation might be that what Councilor Litwin has suggested may fall into the category of related documents. And I don't know if that alleviates the need for a separate change in the motion.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to add that specific criteria. It certainly would be up to the maker of the motion to withdraw their motion based on that point, but I would leave that to the maker of the motion. And do you still want the floor, Councillor Doherty?
No.
Okay. So we have Councillor McKnight. And then Councillor Bergman.
Director Danko, I'm just curious about your thoughts on the amendment and if that is a reasonable course of action in your mind, or maybe something you're already even planning on doing. So
It's fine with me. Like I said, we had a draft ideas of, KPIs that we were going to look at as well. Number of referrals, the number of relationships developed. We definitely will do that, yeah. Okay. We like data too at the library.
Thank you for that. And yeah, so I'm supportive of that amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McKnight. Councillor Bergman?
Well, I was concerned about doing this on the fly, and didn't think that we necessarily needed to do it on the fly and could be able to do that. But based on what Mary has just said, then I feel that can be, it's open enough to fit into the framework that you are talking about, and it's in a time frame that is not going to take away from the work of evaluating, but will give us information, which I do agree we should have before the end, because it's part of our process. So I can support this given what I've just heard, and thank Councillor McKnight for asking the wise question that you did.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to be on the queue on this? Councillor Newbeezer.
I don't want to be a stick in the mud because I think I'm going to vote for this, but I do want to see the language I'm voting on specifically prior to that. And I'm wondering if we can't email that around or something.
Great. I am working on that now. And Councillor Litwin, if I could just confirm if this is appropriate to you, it would be to add to the end of the recommended action that we are requesting that Director Danko establish metrics by which the position will be evaluated and report back to the City Council on those metrics prior to the end of the first contract term.
I would just say on the metrics and then the answers to those metrics, like how, as Director Danko said, the outcomes, I guess. And I just want to clarify, I offer this fully knowing she's going to do this, but I want to commit it to paper for all of our benefit. But otherwise, the language sounded pretty close.
How about report back to the City Council on those metrics and successes of the position prior to the end of the first contract term?
The outcomes of the evaluation.
And the outcomes of the evaluation.
I'm already getting very excited to give this report.
I know, right? So, so requesting that Director Danko establish metrics by which the position will be evaluated and report back to the City Council on those metrics and any outcomes of evaluating this position prior to the end of the first contract term. Does that sound okay to you, Councillor Litwin?
It does, as long as my friend Councillor Newbeezer is also okay with it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to circulate this to the full council, and then the first question will ultimately be whether or not the maker of the motion and the seconder, which is Councillor Broderick and then Councillor Barlow, are friendly to the amendment. So I have just sent that proposal around to the council, and Councillor Broderick, as the maker of the underlying motion, if you could please, once you've had an opportunity to review it, let me know if you're friendly to the amendment.
Yes, I'm friendly to that.
Okay. And Councillor Barlow, are you as well?
Indeed.
Okay. So then the motion is amended as reflected in the email that I just circulated to the full council, copying in the clerk. And I will forward this to you, Mayor, as well as your team and the city attorney. Lots of folks. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions on the motion as amended now? We will go to a vote then. All in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Director
very
Danko.
much,
Appreciate
everyone.
your being
Thank
here.
you.
And I will also note for the record, as others noted here, that on our consent agenda, the council did approve the creation of two new positions to work with the library security, as noted by Councilor Carpenter. And so appreciate a couple library items on tonight's agenda. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our deliberative agenda. Before finishing our council agenda, we do need to briefly recess the city council meeting at 8:33 p.m. and call to order a meeting of the Board of Civil Authority at 8:33 p.m. The first item on our agenda as the Board of Civil Authority is a motion to adopt our agenda. Is there a motion to that end?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McKnight. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? All in favor, then please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have our agenda. The only item on our agenda is the consent agenda with respect to the appointment of assistant election officials for the November 5th, 2024 general election and special city election. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated?
So moved. Second.
Councilor Bergman with the motion, Councilor Grant with the second. Any discussion on that motion? We will then go to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Seeing no other business before the Board of Civil Authority, we will adjourn that meeting at 8:34 p.m. and resume our council meeting at 8:34 p.m. The next item on our council agenda is number 8, committee reports. Is there any councilor with a committee report? Councilor Barlow, Councilor Bergman, and then Councilor Grant.
The Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee will be meeting on October 22nd at 5:30, and we'll be devoting this meeting entirely to the Building Emission Reduction Ordinance Resolution. We'll be hearing from additional input and feedback from key stakeholders, and the committee will be discussing next steps.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Bergman?
Thank you. I actually can't remember when the Charter Change Committee is meeting next, but we have likely to be coming back to this body a proposal on redistricting, something that would take it out of being a charter change, but would keep it being a vote of the city. This is something that city voters. This is something that Montpelier has, and it should not take away any of the protections that the voters have, but will streamline and make it a whole lot better in terms of us not having to get legislative approval for our own local districts, which makes no sense at all to me that they should have basically a veto over that. The second thing is we are waiting for an action by the CDNR committee related to Councilor Litwin's rent hike notice proposal. And I have committed, and the committee has committed to taking the necessary actions to get a proposal before us by the deadline in December. And then finally, while there will not be an action for the council to take with regard to councilor compensation, we are intending to do research into that, and Councilor McKnight has offered generously her expertise in doing surveys so that we can put something together for current and former councilors and the public at large, so we can try to address one of the disincentives to people running for office. There was just a news story on VPR, on NPR, this morning or yesterday, talking about the thousands of local offices that are uncontested. And although I ran in one of those and enjoyed it immensely, to be quite honest, it is not great for democracy. And we should do everything we can to make sure that people can afford, working people in particular, can afford to serve as representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bergman. I have Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Newbeezer, and then Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. The REIB department committee, we are going to be meeting next Tuesday evening, the 15th. We'll be talking about the work being done that was done by the Reparations Task Force. And just want to do a reminder as well that the department is hosting a series of community conversations around the vision and mission redesign of the department. The upcoming events are this Wednesday, the 9th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Robert Miller Community and Recreation Center. Saturday, October 19th, from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Richard Kemp Center. And Thursday, October 24th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Burlington Electric Department. So some different days and times in different parts of the city in order to get feedback from individuals around our city, around what I consider to be a very crucial department in terms of stabilizing it and helping the community really understand and embrace this department. Going back to the Public Safety Committee meeting for a moment, once again, that meeting will be next Thursday, the 17th. I wanted to mention some things that this committee has attempted to work on and will continue to work on with regards to addressing the letter that we did receive around the feeling that there is a lack of support from city leadership and community. I don't think this is true, but what I do see is that we continue not to have a strategic plan to highlight that support. And that is what I talk about frequently, and I would like to see more participation from the department itself. The letter does not address meaningful actions that are also required on the part of BPD. There has been real harm done to public confidence as evidence of multiple lawsuits, over-policing of certain racial groups in our city, and a number of other things. So the department has to be part of that partnership. They refer to a partnership, but not what they can be doing on their end. So that is what I mean when I talk about a strategic plan. People speak about positive engagement and help that they receive from officers, but yet I don't hear anyone else other than myself encouraging people to submit commendations. So that's one thing we can do as a council and as a city. We also need a strategic social media plan. We continue not to have that, although I have to say in the last 2 months or so, there was finally a decision made, since there couldn't be access to the previous Instagram account. They've created a new one, and they have been posting regularly. So how do we boost those posts? How do we get more engagement? That's not talked about at all, and that is part of it. We have a position that is supposed to be dedicated to these things. In the committee, we've talked about why aren't we being notified? Where is the plan? So I would call on all counselors, not just the counselors that serve on the committee, to start to ask about these things. We cannot just simply have the expectation that the community is going to fall in line, quote unquote. it's a two-way street. And we have to be willing to listen to the ideas from those who maybe sometimes you don't want to hear from. I, for one, very frequently, nobody wants to hear from me. When I read in the letter about the issue of the salary not being advertised, I've brought up so many times about the issues of how we are or not advertising these positions and the numerous issues around the salary information being missing or not correct. And I haven't gotten support when addressing that, and I haven't even gotten support from the department itself. So I will just end it there, just saying it's a two-way street. There are things that we can do, but we need our police department to be part of it. So we'll bring up these things again in the next committee meeting, and I hope that people tune in. I hope that city councilors tune in or watch it at a later time. And I would love for all of us to attend the swearing-in meetings, but it would be great if we got more notice. That's one thing. Like, we could be there if we had more notice as to when they were going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Newbeezer with a committee report to be followed by Councilor Carpenter and then Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, Council President Travers. Just a reminder that CDNR is meeting October 16th at 6:30 p.m. I believe we're in the Sharon Bushore conference room, and we should have a excuse me, we should have a remote link as well. As Councilor Bergman referred to, we'll be discussing, I think, primarily and potentially solely a resolution that Councilor Litwin is bringing forward, and that I'm hopeful we can bring back to this council to then be referred to charter and then hopefully put in front of voters this town meeting day. So definitely encourage folks. It's around, as Councilor Bergman mentioned, the authority the city has to require notice for rent hikes. And so if folks have interest in discussing that and giving their perspective on it, we'd certainly welcome that. And I'll pass the floor back.
Thank you, Councilor Newbeezer. Councilor Carpenter.
Thanks. Two quick things. The mayor had mentioned that the HR committee's looking at the issue of 360 evaluations and working with HR staff on implementing that. The other issue that actually Councilor Litwin brought up, there's been some confusion. Some of you have been notified by NeoGov that you're supposed to take training, and some of us have never been notified of that. So we're going to come back in a month or two with some suggestions of recommended training for city councilors and try to make it a little more consistent, and perhaps it would be something we'd adopt in our rules.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Shannon, and then is there any other councilor with a committee report? All right, Councilor Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you, President Travers. My understanding is that this is not an opportunity to share my opinions on things, and so I will not be sharing my opinions, but giving a report on what's been happening in the Ordinance Committee. We did vote out the graffiti ordinance, which I know was a high priority for the mayor. It wasn't easy. There's a lot of complexity to doing this in a way that's going to be legal and stand up to the First Amendment. But we feel that we have done that, and we asked the administration to work on a plan for enforcement, and that's why it wasn't on this agenda, to give them more time to come forward with that plan for how we're going to enforce this, because that has been a problem with the, it was a problem previously with the ordinance, and that cannot be solved from within the ordinance. So I thank them for working on that and look forward to it coming to the council soon. We also have the condo conversion ordinance and trespass ordinance in committee, and we've had a lot of discussion about these two items. Hopefully we are nearing the end of those discussions and we'll vote them out of committee soon. We also got the emergency shelter, which was referred back to us to address. The dog task force report has been with the committee since, at least since the beginning of this council year. And we have not been able to take that up yet because of higher priorities. We need to get some of the other items on our agenda off our plate before we can take that up. And we have the other zoning issues, other than the secondary structures. There are a number of issues related to neighborhood code that still have to be addressed in committee. So there is quite a lot of work going on in the ordinance committee. I wish I could tell you our next meeting dates, but I cannot. We have a doodle poll out, and we still are waiting for one response. You know who you are. And when we get that, we can set our next several committee dates. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Shannon. Is there any other councilor with a committee report? Seeing none, we will close that item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is City Council President updates. I provided my update during City Council General Affairs, and so we will skip over that. And that takes us to adjournment. And seeing no other business before the council, absent objection, we will adjourn the City Council meeting at 8:48 p.m. Thank you, everyone.